Yo, peace family. Come on in, come on in. Yo, what's good, y'all? What's good? Come on in, come on in. We're getting ready to have an interview, a live interview with my bro at DTR 360 Books. So come on in and tune in, get some of this knowledge right here. What's up, everybody? What's up? Welcome. As soon as my guy tune in, we're gonna go ahead and get this interview started. Let me know how y'all feeling today. Hit me up in the chat. How's everybody doing? Been a long time since I did one of these. It's been a long time coming. I'm not sure if y'all have seen my most recent video I posted. Make sure y'all check that out. Oh, my thing is falling. Yo, what's good, Iana? What's up, Wendell? I'm trying to get my thing to stay up. This thing is trying to topple over. All right, here we go. All right. What's good, Bronx? What's up, Razon? What's good, plant-based plants and prosperity? What's up, family? How we doing?
Peace. What's going on, brother?
What's good, bro? Not much, man. It's good to see you. Nice to finally meet you.
Can you hear me? Is my audio good?
Oh yeah, you good, bro. Everything's good.
Okay.
Yes, indeed. I see everybody coming on in the room. I'm good, man. You know what? I'm tired, but I'm good because, we get ready to have a nice, enriching conversation. You know how it is as an educator, man. It's
right.
Be exhausting. Yes. It's some tiring days, bro.
Indeed. All right, cool. So I'm going to do the introduction, and then I'm gonna play my introduction, introduce you, and then we can get it started from there.
Let's go ahead and get it.
All right, here we go. Welcome to DTR 360 Books Podcast. DTR 360 Books are helping to increase reading literacy. We are here to create more doers and less talkers. This is where we execute the knowledge and put it into action. Enjoy this week's episode of the podcast. Assalamu alaikum, shalom. Pardon me. Assalamu alaikum, shalom, hotep, Islam, Alafia, peace. What's going on, family? Man, happy Monday. Welcome back. Another episode of DTR 360 Books podcast. Man, today, man, I'm telling you, we have a very special guest here tonight. He's an educator like myself, so this is real good because I try to reach out to African Black educators to come on the platform and speak about their experience, because not too often, hardly we hear from Black educators and their experience, right? So especially Black male teacher and educator. So I try to reach out to as many Black male teachers as possible to hear their story, to hear their experience inside and outside the classroom. All right, so let's get started. So we will start by a few housekeeping items. All right, family. So make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel, DTR 360 Books, so that you can see and hear the full interview podcast here tonight. All right, and podcast, whichever one, make sure that you subscribe to that podcast outlet and support us. All right, so it's a simple follow, it's a simple subscribe. All right, so make sure that you support the podcast and the YouTube channel just by clicking the subscribe button. That's all. That's free 99. All right, and also making sure that you share this video as well. Share this video because I'm telling you, this interview will be very informative. It will be very insightful and very educational. So make sure you share. Tap the share button. Make sure that you get it out to as much people is possible. All right, so Mr. Ernest Crim III. He is a Black history advocate who uses Black history as a tool, speaking from personal experience with hate crime to help students, teachers, companies, and organizations reach their potential personally, culturally, and communally. Mr. Crim is a South Side of Chicago native, shout out to Chicago, and University of Illinois. Urbana campaign alumnus, delivers his message through a variety of mediums as an international speaker, best-selling author of Black History Saved My Life, which we will get into later on. He's a TikTok influencer, and if you don't know, he's been featured on PBS, CBS, NBC, NPR, A&E, and many other news outlets. I can go on and on. So without further ado, welcome, Mr. Crim III. Welcome, family. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, brother. It's a pleasure and honor to be here, man. Let's get into some of this knowledge.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Amen. That's what I'm about. Indeed, that's what I'm about. All right. So, first things first, let's tell the family a little bit about yourself, your upbringing, Chicago native. What was that like?
Yeah, man. So I'm a South Side of Chicago native, and a lot of people on the outside looking in, when you think about how we're portrayed, it's often portrayed as a place where it's like the wild, wild west, where it's a bunch of shooters and people going crazy and going wild. And for me, man, I had an upbringing just like anybody else. Like I grew up in an area where, for me, it was it was a great community. Everybody was close in it. This is pre-social media, pre-internet, so we was outside all the time. On a day like this in my area, it's about 55 degrees, so I would have came home, I'd have went outside hooping all day. And like most inner city communities, we had issues and stuff going on there too. It was a lot of gang activity and things of that nature, but I still feel like we were close knit. Now, little did I know, I did not realize that my neighborhood was like that for a reason, because even though we were close knit, there were a couple things that that are common in America that I didn't realize until I started going to a white school. For one, everybody in my neighborhood looked like me. Now, I understand our need to have a community, but a lot of times folks don't realize that that was something that was forced upon us, right? So it was redlining. I didn't realize this. I didn't know, like, going to the local store, that the only options we had were things that weren't healthy. We didn't have fresh food. We didn't have grocery stores. You know what I'm saying? We had the corner store, the liquor store, where they were selling stuff to people they shouldn't have been selling. We had, in Chicago, Harold's Chicken. That was the closest food spot. Now, Harold's Chicken is good, but we didn't have anything else to counter that. There were no juice bars. You know what I'm saying? There was no, like, local grocery store to just walk to and get some fresh food. So for me, the thing that happened was, when I was 6, I started going to this white school in a white community, and I was a part of a busing program. The schools in my neighborhood were underfunded. And the problem with that is we have great educators in our community, but oftentimes we're not given the same amount of resources as other schools. So when I go to these schools, that's when I started to realize something wasn't right. Like, why do they have all of this stuff in their school? They got football teams, they got libraries, they got grocery stores, they got, what I'm saying, they got chiropractic offices, they got investment banks and stuff like that, Edward Jones and all of this. But for me, it was corner store, liquor store, abandoned lot, and we didn't even have a park to hoop at. We had to play in the alley on somebody's crate, or we had to get a rim. So for me, it was just an awakening process. Real close-knit community, but at an early age, I began to discover that something just wasn't right with the setup.
So why do you think that inside of your community there was only, liquor stores, corner stores, pizza shops? Why do you think that was?
Yeah, so as a child, I thought it was just that was how things were. But then this is why Black history and our information is so important. We see the efforts people are going through right now to ban our history. And that's because once we learn these things, it makes sense and we can work to undo it. See, what happened was, when people that say we live in the hood, we live in the ghetto, whatever, and I get that, but oftentimes it's said in a derogatory manner. Understand that these things, y'all, were created by our own government. Like, after slavery so-called ended, we had prosperous communities throughout America. They were not helping reconstruct what they built, but we were building our own places all across the country. And of course, most infamously, we know Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But like when the Great Depression happened, everybody was impacted by it, especially our community. We never got what we deserved. So when that happened, it tore apart our whole world, right? And then around the 1930s, the mid 1930s, FDR creates this New Deal policy and Federal Housing Administration. They're handing out loans to people. But who's not getting loans? We aren't getting loans. So because of that, we already live close to each other. We're having to pay for a home with cash, or we're getting subprime mortgages. And then because of that, businesses are not going to come to a community in which there's no cash flow. So like our demise was created, you know? So that happens in the 30s. We know what's going on up and through the 60s. And even when we're fighting to come back against that, we have presidents like Richard Nixon who are reorchestrating our demise with the war on drugs. And then we ain't even started talking about the crack era. So when I was born in the mid to late 80s, bro, in 87, like everything was already set for us to just, you know, self-implode. And through all of that, we have to find that it wasn't our fault. It was created. And we have to work through that to try to make a better life for ourselves.
Indeed, indeed. Definitely working through all obstacles, challenges, and hurdles to make a life for self, for a better self, right? And with that being said, I think first we need to make sure that we improve self. And then second, we need to make sure that we trust one another and that we work in unity, because there's power in numbers and there is strength in numbers as well. Far too often, I find that because we self-hate ourselves, we don't like and dislike our brothers and sisters who look just like us. So that is something that we have to overcome and overcome yesterday, like it was yesterday.
Right.
So let's move on, right? So as I mentioned in the bio, you're a Black history teacher. So two-part question. One, why Black history? And two, how did you become a Black history teacher?
Yeah, man, great question. So why Black history? Because I'm Black. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, if we just being honest, here's how I figured this out. At an early age, I was one of those individuals who I couldn't stand to see people getting bullied. You know, I was always the guy, even when I'm going to this white school, and I was fairly popular. We cool, like we didn't, you know, at a young age, especially, you don't really care. Like you don't care what you look like. But there would be people at the school who were white getting bullied by other white folks or whatever, and I just wasn't the type that would do that. I didn't like that. There were dudes in my neighborhood that would get bullied like in very humiliating ways, and even though I could see that this person would be an easy person to take advantage of, I didn't have a heart for that, so I didn't do it. And I'm relating that to our situation because racism is essentially systemic bullying. And when I began to become privy to this stuff, I was like, you know what? I have a passion for this, and the deep connection is because I can't stand to see people get picked on, especially when I know that these folks are powerful. So it's Black history because it's my whole life, it's my whole existence, and it's not just that. Like we are everything. Like they, you know, the people who hate us actually come from us, which is it's kind of crazy when you think about it and consider it. But like Black history is world history, which is wild because when you start world history in school, you starting with they stuff. No, Black history is y'all. Like y'all came from this. there would be no creations in Europe. Like the first people in these continents looked like us. So when I began to see this, it was like the missing puzzle piece. It's like I have to learn this to make sense of my reality. And being inspired by making sense of my reality, I realized it can give other people a purpose. I almost flunked out of college, man. Wow. I didn't go to college to study Black history. I went there to study psychology, almost flunked out. And then what happened was our school had an African American studies department. I was always curious about Black history. My household was full of Black stuff. Just never had a chance to take the course. I take the course, fell in love. Like I was actually in a position where I could have majored in it, but because I wanted to teach public school, you have to be able to teach, you know, everything. So I just took the history major and I minored in African American studies because it was like I was connecting the dots. It's almost like you had a 1,000-piece puzzle on a chair or a table or something for 20 some years, and all of a sudden you like find the picture and you're able to start connecting everything, or the stars at the nighttime, the night sky, you're able to start connecting the dots to make this picture. So it gave me purpose. So I know, like, yo, if I was able to relay this information to our community, our people, I know for a fact they're going to be inspired. Because like you said, it's self-empowerment first. We cannot depend on anybody else to do what's necessary. We know they should. We'll keep bringing it up, but at the same time, I have to work on myself and work on my community as if it ain't going to happen. And I know that's the key. There's a 2012 Harvard study that says that when black children are taught to have racial pride, they perform better academically. Now,
Oh yeah.
these schools know this. Like my life and your life is an example of this being true. But they ain't gonna teach us our history because they don't want us to be empowered. That's why they fighting against it now. So that's why we have to make sure we empowering our kids. Black history is the key because if you're gonna change anything, it starts with your mind. You know what I'm saying? Like they say, like a fool in their money shall soon part. If I give somebody some money, they don't know how to budget things, you're gonna waste it. So we have to be, comparatively, we have to learn how to budget our money. So when we come across that money, we know how to invest it and make our community stronger and better.
Indeed, indeed. I mean, just as a another analogy, people like to say knowledge is power, but I tend to disagree because applied knowledge is true power. To your point, if you don't apply the knowledge, then it's not powerful. It wouldn't matter if you just have the knowledge. It wouldn't matter if you just read books. And I sell books, right? But it
Right.
wouldn't matter if you just read. It wouldn't matter if you go to these lectures, huh? If you listen to these YouTube lectures and these YouTube videos about Black empowerment, about history, if you're not applying it, if you're not spreading the knowledge that you've obtained from these YouTube videos, the knowledge that you obtained from these IG posts, it doesn't
Right.
mean nothing if you don't implement, execute, and apply. So I always say that applied knowledge is true power. So
Mm-hmm.
we have to get to the norm. We have to make it a norm to, yes, read books, but after we read it, apply what you just
Right.
learned from it. I tell my
Right.
students that all the time. Because us, to our generation, right? 80s babies and the millennials, whatever you want to call it,
Yep.
we are stagnated. We are fixed because we just want to learn on YouTube. We
Mm-hmm.
just want to learn from these IG lives and so forth, but we don't want to do the work. We don't want to do the real work. And the real work is executing, is implementation. That's the real work, going out into the streets,
Yep.
doing the grassroots movement. That is the real work. What we
Mm-hmm.
used to do, what our grandparents used to do in the 50s and 60s. And then Marcus Garvey, may Allah be pleased with him, he talked about up your mighty race. We
Mm-hmm.
can accomplish what you will. So he talked about self-empowerment. He talked about the enrichment of your mind. He talked about all of these things because he knew once you have self-pride, once you have self-respect, you will do better, you will feel better, and you will treat your brothers and your sisters better as well. So,
Exactly.
yeah, man, I know this is your time. I ain't mean to go off on a
Oh
tangent like
no,
that.
but I feed off there, bro, because that's real. Because you know what, we can only replicate or become what we've seen or been exposed to. So I was talking to my students today about we talking about World War II and the rise of Hitler and just talking about how regular everyday Germans had no idea what they were being exposed to, but Hitler was real diabolical because he knew what type of propaganda to expose to people. And I was teaching them. I said that same type of stuff like propaganda, you need positive propaganda because if we're constantly exposed to negativity like they were exposed about Jews, we're exposed to that same negativity about ourselves. So it's not just white people who are being taught implicitly or explicitly to hate us. We being taught the same way, that internalized racism. So if the only image I have of myself, like I did growing up for the most part, was basketball or rap, and thankfully my parents showed me some other stuff. That's gonna be the only thing I go for. I was at an event and they called some young folks to the stage a few weeks back and they asked the young man what they wanted to be. Most of them still saying athlete. It's like this has to stop. Not saying we shouldn't strive for that, but okay, then what? But I can't blame us because that's all we see. We see LeBron, peace to LeBron, because he's doing great things. But what else? What about the sports agency he owns? What about the production company he owns? What about the fact that he started a school? We could be doing that type of stuff too. So it's not just history, bro, like you're saying. It's we are reimagining our whole mindset, like our whole psyche. Because if the first thing you think about when you think of blackness is what they say about us, then you can never reach your full potential. When I see a young man, a brother walking down the street or a sister, I see royalty. I'm seeing that glimpse of what we were and who we truly are. When I see those locks, I see power. Them braids, I see power. You know what I'm saying? But that's not what they want us to think. And that's why we gotta unplug. But that's what I love about social media and pages like yours, man, because then we can reshape that. If you follow in the right people, you're undoing what they tried to do and what they have done, you know?
Oh yes, oh yes. Brother, you mentioned a couple of times at the inception of this podcast interview, you mentioned that when you was little, you seen images, black images, and so forth. And then just at this point in time, you mentioned that your parents showed you other things that were um, black related, right? Black consciousness and so forth.
Yep.
How important was seeing those images as a child and growing up, and then I guess diverting away from that a bit, studying psychology, and then end up coming back to it with studying Black history, now teaching Black history, and then your parents teaching you and showing you our richness and royalty. How important was that
Man,
to
it
you?
meant the world, bro. Like we didn't have one image of a white person in our house displayed. Like there was no image
Wait,
of
say that again?
there was not one image of a white person in our house displayed. And I didn't think about that till you just said that because I'm thinking I have the visual image of growing up on 128th and Sangamon on the south side of Chicago, and everything from it was Malcolm X. We grew up in a Malcolm X household. My mom made that clear. We loved Dr. King, but my mom was about that Malcolm X life, and we learned by any means necessary. That's how she was taught growing up on the south side. Even Jesus, I still got the picture in my room on the side. The Last Supper was a dark skinned Jesus with long hair.
Yes,
That
yeah, I know that picture.
you know what I'm talking about? Like that's all we saw. Like so when I saw the Malcolm X movie and I saw how he got up, like yo, why do we see a blonde hair, blue eye? Like that was the mentality I had growing up. We had this thing right in my house, and it was starting upstairs down to my basement. And there were pictures called Great Kings and Queens of Africa, and there were drawings of these individuals. And I remember seeing these folks every single day of my life, bro. And as a child, though, I did not know who they were. I barely even took the time to read it, but I kid you not. Because a lot of this information we teach our kids or even get now, we won't even be able to apply it till later, but it's in our mind, it's in our psyche. So when I began teaching the Black Studies course, I remember trying to find images of certain people. As I'm Googling, what do I come across? These same posters my mom and dad had up. And yo, these things were sponsored by Budweiser beer, of all people. But I looked at Mansa Musa, right, and Sunni Ali, and I was being conditioned in a positive way. That's what our kids have to see every night. When I read to my kids, we're reading a black book by a black author. It's going to be about people who were fighting or people who were before slavery, or it's going to be people that look like them. And I'm always going to let them know that this is what you can do. Because when my parents showed me that, and then I went to this white school, I already had the buffer in place. So I didn't like whatever they were going to talk about. My household looked completely different. It was like a Black History museum, like the bookshelf you see behind me. I got books on here that my parents had. We read at home. I knew about Matthew Henson when I was like 6 years old. You know what I'm saying? Lewis Latimer. I got those same books. That like the revolution, y'all, starts at the crib. It
Mm.
starts at home. Like, what are you doing with your children every day? If your children are in these schools, and I get it because my kids are too, but I'm checking every day. What are y'all learning about? What you talking about in history class, right? You're gonna learn more about your history from me than your teacher. So when you get there, you're gonna be able to teach them something, right? When they get to high school, it's really gonna be a wrap. But it starts here, and it starts with conversations. It starts with showing them things. I've done something where I have a person of the week sometimes for my kids with their little whiteboard in their little play area. So those images, you got to think of it like when they grabbing them tablets, and I get it, the tablets and the TV, it's hard. Sometimes you got to have some parenting time. I get it, but understand that society is conditioning them to be consumers, and to be a consumer, you have to constantly think that you are inadequate. So we have to be in the game of marketing. We all marketers. What are you showing to your kids? That was everything for me, and it still is right now.
Man, I love that. I love that so much, man, because those who follow me know that I preach that same exact uh, statement and implementation, right? That our households, education begins in the household, and even moreover, that our mothers, our mothers are the first teacher of that child, and that child, the mother gives to uh that child. That child gives to the world. So we have to be very careful of how we are teaching our children and what images they see while they was young. Okay,
Yep.
your
Yep.
mother, man, big up to your mother, man, for real. Shout out to your mother because she knew, she knew. Let me put these black images up inside my house so that even though if you don't know then what you know now,
Yep.
still you're able to recollect your thoughts and you're able to go back and memorize those images when
Yep.
you was young. So the image, and this is why slavery was such a detriment and was such a trauma inheritance to us because of the images that we
Mm-hmm.
saw night after night, day after day. It made us a new person based
Yep.
off of the trauma, images, and knowledge or lack thereof
Yep.
that we became accustomed to.
Yep. Yep.
So much so that we started acting and portraying and displaying like our so-called slave masters.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
started to beat our children like
Mm.
how they beat us.
Yep.
We started to say certain things, yell at them, and be angry at them for no reason, just as our so-called slave masters was
Mm-hmm.
yelling, was mad at us for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
So the subconscious mind is very powerful. The
Yep.
subconscious mind is very powerful because it helps you to remember and it helps you to act out either negatively or positively.
Yep.
And this is psychology.
Yep.
So we need to learn more about psychology and read up on it some more
Yep.
because some of the things that we're doing, we don't even know that it's because of our past trauma. That's the
Exactly.
subconscious. That's how subconscious mind is so powerful.
Survival mode. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So I always say, man, make sure that we read. We read so much. We read because a reading people is a rising people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A reading people is a rising people. So let's rise, family. Let's rise.
Indeed. Yes, indeed.
So my next question for you, dear brother, and thank you for that profound uh, memory and that profound
Oh,
answer
no
as well.
doubt.
So speaking of education, right? So I seen that you have some books that inspired you, right? And
Yeah.
so this is a book page.
Mm-hmm.
This is an educational platform. And we have a few of which you have on your list.
Mm-hmm.
Lies My Teacher Told Me.
Mm-hmm.
You have The Miseducation of the Negro.
Yeah.
And you have Asada, the autobiography of Asada Shakur.
Yeah.
All of these books are on our websites. Well, my website.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shameless plug, right?
Yeah. No, go ahead and grab
So my
it.
question for you is, what do these books mean to you? And can you name one or two things that you learned from these books?
Oh yeah, man, bro. It's so starting off with the first one you mentioned. Rest in peace, brother James Lowen, who just passed away a couple months back. James
Mm,
Lowen, who wrote "Lies My Teacher Told Me." I don't remember how I came across the book, but I just knew that when I was going to teach history, I needed to read stuff like that because James Lowen is a white brother who actually taught at Tougaloo at HBCU, and he wrote another book that's profound that everybody needs to grab, called Sundown Towns. He's basically using that white privilege that we say to infiltrate white society and expose why these towns were created to be white. And with Lies My Teacher Told Me, he's dissecting these books, these textbooks, and they're basically talking about how they come from this Eurocentric perspective that perpetuate racism and the myth of American exceptionalism. It's really deep because I don't think we grew up on these things. I grew up going to a black high school, and I recall like our history class was essentially read to the end of that section, answer the questions. Now, not understanding that these books are meant to trivialize our experience. So if they're not explicitly saying it, he was pointing out different ways they wouldn't even talk about things. So that book is important for that instance, because it's going to give you all like an overall view of how America has created this myth, or even like the lost cause myth that the Civil War may have been about states' rights or some nonsense like that. Asada's book, like this book right here, is powerful because I mean, like let's just keep it real. Like she got away. Like our sister was framed in this system that tried to destroy her, and she does this in such a profound way. Like she tells you her story, but she's so G with it. She don't let you know how she there, but she there. And she is a soldier, knowing that connection between her and Tupac Shakur, knowing how bold and brave she was and is. And to me, again, it's just inspiring to know that she was able to keep herself together, because we often hear about our people being killed, and they still after her to this day. Like whenever there's a conversation about Cuba, even when Barack Obama was president, the first thing they say, oh, we got to get Assata. We got to get Assata. For one, there's a lot of evidence that show that she didn't do it. For two, she was shot at first, and we have proof that she was shot. And three, she was in the New Jersey area, bro. She ended up in Cuba. And this government knows how to find anybody at any time, and she found a way around it. So like she's a stand-up sister. We need to like, and here's the thing about it: most people outside of this community definitely are not gonna know about her, and that's by design. They don't want you to know about her. She like and with being a part of the Panthers, she was standing up for what, like they showed the model. That's what you mean by applied knowledge, bro. Because when you study the Panthers, you want to go out there and feed your people. You want to provide free health care. I remember one time, man, I was picking up some food one day. It was late night on Friday, I believe. And I recall seeing, I think it was a black and Hispanic brother being pulled over by some officers. It looked like it was some crazy stuff going on. So what I did was, now it was a well-lit area, but a lot of folks were just riding by because it was like a kind of a more affluent white suburb. They weren't thinking nothing of it. I stood my butt on the side and I was just watching. Like not super obvious, but I was just watching. And how do I know that? Because Assata Shakur, who was in Black Panthers with Huey P. Newton, said that's what they used to do. And they did that at a time period where it was really dangerous to do that. They will pull over their car and do it and step outside. So like her and him, like that's inspiring to me. And with Carter G. Woodson, man, bro, we can do a whole hour on brother Carter G. Woodson.
Right.
You know, he is the reason why we had Black History Week, which became Black History Month. And I think it's important for us to understand that Carter G. Woodson did that not to celebrate it for 1 month, but to say we celebrate it all year, but let's come together like a family during this month and talk about what we learned. But come March 1st, go back to learning, go back to teaching, go back to reading. This brother dissected the impact of racism on us so profoundly, man. When he talks about like how, you know, if we are exposed to negative images, how that will upset the plan of the oppressor. When he said that if the black person is expecting to get out of the ghetto by the same hand that put him in the ghetto, he will remain there and in that situation. Like the whole book is a paradigm shift. If you take miseducation of the Negro and you replace Negro with black man or African American, you're gonna think it's 2022, bro. Like we need to elevate him a lot more, because what he wrote like 90 years ago, it still applies today, man, and it's so real.
Man, so right, so right. So that being said, of Carter G. Woodson, the Miseducation of the Negro, again, which is on my website, click the link in the bio. You can see that that book was published in 1933, and of what all of those situations and experiences that he wrote on in the 1930s, as you just said, we can see it today in 2020 AD. What do you say about our progression?
So
have we progressed since the 1930s, or have we digressed?
Man, so man, I have a unique perspective, I think, on that. So I'll start this by quoting Chris Rock. And Chris Rock was in his interview, man, and I love comedians because I don't think they get enough credit. They're social commentators. They can deliver a message, but it's just in a comedic way. And in some ways, like a Chappelle, like a Chris Rock, man, they could be like a philosopher, like a Dick Gregory, George Carlin, you know. And he said something before. Somebody asked him in an interview about, like, you know, how we made progress. And he said, well, like, you know, well, what do you mean progress? He said, to say that Obama is progress is to say that we were never qualified to be president. And I was like, dang, he hit me with that one because I had never thought of that. And it's true because, like, Frederick Douglass, another one of the books that I love, he was qualified, but they weren't trying to elect him. Harriet Tubman was more than qualified. You know how many mediocre white men have been elected into office, or even less than mediocre? You know what I'm saying? So we've always been that. I think that, so what I like to phrase it as is we're trying to reclaim who we are. Or I say reclaiming the crown, or like rediscovering ourselves. So when I think about us from now to the 30s, I think that we, in terms of mindset, I think we're going through these peaks and valleys. I think that we are rediscovering the mindset of the Harlem Renaissance, probably. You know, I think that we are rediscovering the mindset of those who were fighting in the 60s. I think that we have regressed, though, in some ways, but in terms of just our ability to rely on ourselves. I think that's where we regress. I think that we are now more reliant on the government, and I don't mean like handouts. I mean in terms of people we elect to help us out. Like, I don't have any faith in any of them, no matter your color. I just don't. I mean, I understand, like, I know representation matters, but even more than that, like, representation that leads to resources, you know. But even if we had a person that we had the perfect resume, I believe that the system is so powerful in place that they'll probably change quicker than they do anything for us. So, like, I think we just kind of have to go back to saying we don't have any friends, we don't have any allies. Create our own. And if you like with politics, look locally first. That's where you have to change and influence. I think we need to go back to that. But in terms of progress, I'm gonna take it back to Chris Rock and say we already there. And our job as educators, and yourself too as a book distributor, is really just reminding folks it's already in you. You come from greatness. You are great. It's just like we are here to say, look, do you remember what you did 5,000, 2,000, 500 years ago, 100 years ago? That's it.
Word. Man, so family, we have reached the halfway point of this podcast. Man, thank you for all of you who have tuned in thus far. We appreciate you. And again, just a couple of housekeeping items, making sure that you subscribe to support this podcast. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers by the end of March. Okay, we're trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers by the end of March. I think we're at about 620-ish. All right, so make sure that if you like what you're hearing, if you like Black history, man, if you like this conversation, if you like this dialogue, make sure that you support the brother as well. If you're tuning in on my platform, make sure and support Mr. Crim, and make sure that you support this podcast by subscribing to our YouTube channel and subscribing and following us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or even iHeartRadio. All right. Also, clicking the link in my bio as well. This is still Black History Month, and then even after today, which will be March 1st, it will still be Black History Month, right? Or as I like to call African and Black History Month. So yeah, make sure you click the link in my bio. Make sure you click the link in Mr. Crim's bio if you're not familiar with him, and make sure you watch his interviews as well. All right, bringing it on back. All right, so brother, my next question is, so when I was doing some research on you, right? I had no idea, first and foremost, that you was involved in a hate crime. And I had no idea that you went viral on TikTok. I had no idea. I was just reaching out again because I seen one of your videos on Instagram. I'm more of an Instagram user than TikTok. I do have TikTok as well, but I'm more of an IG user. In any case, I seen one of your videos and I'm like, yo, this brother would be great to come on my podcast show and, you know, teach or to speak about Black history. But again, after doing some research, excuse me, I found out that you was a part of a hate crime incident. So take us back a little bit, right? So what was that experience like, if I'm not mistaken, 2016?
Yeah. Yeah.
when a European woman spat on you and started calling you racist names. Take us
Hmm.
through that situation.
Yeah, man. It was traumatic and it was life
Did
changing.
you? Okay.
Yeah, it was
Yeah, I
so
was going to ask, was there like a physical altercation?
No, that was the
Oh,
only like physical contact we had, bro. It was July 30th, 2016, and I guess I would say even before discussing what happened, at that point I had been teaching for 6 years. I had a lifetime of being prideful of who I was. But I had been out in the streets teaching for 6 years, so I had this wealth of knowledge and pride in myself already. Of course, you never expect that to happen, but when it did happen, I was more than prepared to handle myself accordingly. Me and my wife, man. I'm an unassuming dude, bro. I just, do my thing. I'm low key, blend in, just treat people with respect. And we were at this event. It was at the South Shore Cultural Center, south side of Chicago. And towards the end of the event, it was like a day party. It was outside on the lakefront. We getting ready to leave, and I noticed there's an open beanbag game called Cornhole. So we go over there to play it, but there was only one beanbag for our station, and she was a part of a group of four people, two black and two white, and they had a bunch of them. Somebody threw one very far in that group, and nobody went to grab it. So my wife went to go retrieve it, and we just assumed she was done, and that's when all hell broke loose. And it's just one of the white ladies just went berserk, started screaming at us. And I was like, nah, you ain't getting the bag back now because there's a way you address people. So if she would have said politely, we're still using it, oh, yeah, go ahead. So she was off the chain like we stole a purse. And I get defensive because I'm only there with my wife and it's for them. She begins to call us the Nword. So I take out my phone. And what you see is in the video, because I'm recording the whole thing first person perspective. Her two black friends are the ones actually protecting her. They're like in the middle, kind of. So as she's saying this, again, I don't expect anything. I'm not shocked if a white person is outwardly racist towards me. I'm just not. That doesn't surprise me. What did surprise me though was the fact that her friends did not try to defend us at all. So I was looking at the friends and like, yo, y'all gonna do something. Y'all gonna do something. I was really looking at the brother. This is like, yo, again, for right or for wrong, when I see my brother, even if we don't know each other, I see, yo, like I feel you. If anything go down, I got you. It's kind of how I am. But
right.
everybody ain't like that, man. So he didn't do anything, and she keeps calling us his word, and then she walks away with them kind of in the middle. Then she spits on us, on me and my wife, and that was like I say the beginning of the end. That was the end of the old me. She was calling the cops too. I think it's important for people to know she was calling the cops to come over, and we know how that can be weaponized. And this was 2016 in July. This is a few weeks after Alton Sterling, if people remember that. A few weeks after my brother Philando Castile. So like I had on a shirt actually. It was like a Black Pride shirt. Matter of fact, it had some books on there, brother. It had like the destruction of black, civilization. It had a bunch of stuff on there, pro-black stuff. So I was kind of like in that mindset, but I was trying to have fun and take my mind off these things. And when she got kicked out, because the cops came over, they saw, of course, we didn't react the way she anticipated. So he saw her as being the aggressor. He grabs her, and she's fighting this cop and she survived it, right? I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be able to say the same thing. They kick her out. Cop comes back, and we find out that he didn't arrest her. There was no information given. So we said, okay, bet, we out of here. And I found out I had all the footage. And from that point forward, man, I posted on Facebook. It went viral. Facebook kicked me off. I reposted it on YouTube. And from then, bro, I've been fighting. And I used that to say, like, why am I being so quiet in terms of I'm only speaking in my class to my kids? Now, my kids need it, right? But that's only like 120 kids a year as an educator. But I was like, I was prepared to fight. And I knew what she was saying was ridiculous because I knew who I was as a person, as a black man, as an African man in this country. So I went on this pursuit, not just for justice, but to do stuff like this because I knew some stuff that could help other people out. And that's why I say Black history saved my life.
Mm, man. Well, first I would like to say, man, my apologies for going through that situation. I wouldn't wish that on no one, right? And I commend you. I commend you for not getting physical,
Yeah.
because that sounded like a physical altercation,
Oh
or
yeah.
that sounded like a situation that might have escalated physically.
It was worth
So
it.
that definitely took some emotional balance, so to speak,
Hmm.
for you to just stay calm and record as she was saying all of the things that she said. So now you said that the woman she was taken away by the police, but after the fact, did she receive any consequence of any sort?
Right. So here's where it gets interesting. So the fact that she was kicked out with she didn't get arrested. So that's kind of where the journey began. So we didn't know anything about her. So I go to my car. I had like 3 separate videos. I had stopped recording. I pressed record a couple times. I put the videos together, and I live about 45 minutes from Chicago. So I posted it on there, and then on by the time I got home, I asked people. It was a private Facebook page at that point. I was like, "Yo, I know somebody knows who she is. Please let me know." By the time I got home, my inbox was full of people letting me know who she was. So that was like, July 30th. Then I did a couple press runs because the video was going so crazy. The internet did such a great job when she got fired like the next day, which hurt us though because we couldn't like arrest her. So I filed the police report, and then it took like 2.5 months. By mid-October, they found out where she worked, a new place, and they arrested her. When I found out this from a Hispanic lady online and let me know that she was working there, and they saw the video. So from that point, from October 2016 to October 2017, we were going to court. She got arrested while she was at work, had to keep going back. She posted bond, and then she eventually was sentenced to 3 months in Cook County. So they didn't, now get this, now that the white judge did not want to keep the hate crime charge, right? But he kept the
Wow.
assault. So it's a little. I think that's the. I think it's perfect though because man, like that's America. Like I have footage. I have proof. Most people don't have that. You can see the whole thing happen. You can see the hate, the maliciousness. But he was like, "Nah, this is more just an assault." Okay, that's America. That gave me the drive though to even keep going because yeah, I'm glad she got time, and truthfully, I wasn't leaving that court unless somebody was getting locked up. But it showed me that there's still so much work to do. So yeah.
Right, indeed. And so, seeing that you were the victim of a hate crime, you were the, victim of the court system being biased
Mm-hmm.
against you. How did that make you feel about the court system itself?
Honestly, man, it wasn't a surprise. Like I'll be real with you. Like the fact that I even went through that process was more of a surprise, and it was more of a personal test, man. Because I grew up like, and my mentality was you fight. That's how you resolve stuff.
That's what
I
I'm
didn't, I,
saying.
I didn't really get out of that mindset till I got to about middle school. Around 10 years old, I was fighting all the time in my neighborhood. I mean, I was a younger guy too. That's just what we did. So you got a little maturity, and and the thing is too, like if I had not been holding the phone, it probably would have been a lot different. I think the fact that I was holding the phone, there was probably a little bit of freezing too, not really understanding what just happened. But it just reinforced what I already knew because I don't have any faith in the system, which is bizarre because I went through the system for this. But my mindset at that point is like, well, look, you do something like that to me, man. I'm a motivated person, bro. I see stuff to the end. Like I'm one of them dudes where it's like people, somebody thought you forgot what they did, and it's like, no, I ain't forget. It might be 4 years later, but it's like you thought the game didn't end yet, and I make that last bucket, and that sealed the victory. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it was like I had 2 kids at the time, so I'm like, yo, they gonna see this one day because it already went viral. I gotta conclude this story. It has to be some type of justice. They have to see that they got their family got justice, their mom got justice, more importantly, and also two that there's a way you can go about this. Now, one way is fighting, and anybody that you would have been like in your right mind because anybody would have. I get that, right? But there's also another way we can go about it. And I think even through the process, it reminded me that our journey for what we truly want is long. And it's not just something that's going to be resolved by beating somebody up in one instance. It will feel good, don't get me wrong. But we talking about something generational, bro. So like whatever I do in my lifetime and whatever you do, there's something we have to pass on and continue fighting. But it was already what I knew. I was actually shocked she got any time, but I told myself, and I was dead serious with it. that if she didn't get some time, then I was probably gonna end up taking out. Cause yeah,
Right, right. Oh man, that's a crazy, crazy situation, man. But
yeah,
I'm glad that you came out victorious.
yes
I'm
indeed, yes
glad.
indeed.
Um, so all right, so let's move on. So teaching. Oh, so let's go to your book, right?
Hmm.
Because you're an author now,
Yeah,
entitled "Black History Saved My Life."
yeah.
Talk about that book and why that title.
Yeah. So, one of the things that happens, so when you deal with something like this, and I hope that nobody ever has to, but it's very traumatic. You know, regardless of how you respond to that situation, it's a traumatic thing, and it does make you think, like, man, what did our ancestors have to put up with? Because the fact that I was able to go through this and have her arrested and serve time, to me, that's something you never see. That we were subjected to that all the time at one point in time in history, and it was nothing that could be done. So for me to experience that, like I had to figure out how to heal myself. 2 weeks later, I had to go back to work. You know what I'm saying? I'm an educator, so thankfully I teach history, but still being able to talk about it wasn't enough. I broke down, bro. One day it was like March, so that's crazy, right? 6 years ago in March. Um, I broke down on the way to work, just like feeling isolated, feeling like I was going into an environment at work where it's only like two or three of us, and I'm talking black men. I didn't really feel the support. I didn't feel like I came to a place where it was like they were concerned about my well-being and what happened. That's a wound. Like when somebody calls you that over and over and over again, and they know they have a system backing them up, that's a wound, and we haven't healed from a lot of these wounds. So I called off work because I broke down, and I remember looking for a therapist, and I didn't know where to go, bro. Like we have our health insurance, and we know we find a medical doctor, but nobody ever talks about what about when you want to just talk to somebody, right? We talk about physical health, but what about mental health? So
Right.
couldn't find anybody, and I remember just saying, like thinking to myself, well, dang, I remember wanting to write a book. When I graduated from college, I said I want to write a book because books changed my life so much. I want to write something, but I don't know what to write about. Lo and behold, this situation happens, bro. And I'm like, well, I think I got a story. And what I did was I started to recount every instance of racism I dealt with from the age of 6 up until that point. And I began to think like I can teach people, because here's one of my beliefs. I think in history, we talk about, of course, slavery. We talk about the civil rights movement. We don't really talk about all the other stuff in between with the lynchings in history. But even still, after Dr. King is assassinated, we probably not going to talk about the Black Panthers. But even worse, we barely ever talk about the 80s. I didn't learn anything about the 80s except the Cold War. We didn't talk about the crack era. We didn't talk about cocaine being intentionally placed in our communities and so on and so forth. So I felt like my story could bridge that gap, because we stopped at 1968, then we don't pick up until about 2012. Rest in peace, Trayvon Martin. It's been 10 years, but that's a big gap. What was going on with black people then? We were still being treated the same way by our government, but there was no social media to really to document it that way. So my story was one in which I wanted to show people that when I dealt with racism as a black man growing up, my history is what like created that foundation or that buffer. It was almost the jab, the counter punch, and it said, okay, they're saying this about you in school, but this is what really was. Or I had a friend from Nigeria. He got ran out the neighborhood. They would spray paint and go back to Africa Nword, so
Mm.
he left, right? But for me, growing up, of course, we are force fed a certain image of Africa. So I talk about in that chapter what Africa is really like based on my research, you know. And right, and I wanted people to know that learning that gave me the resolve to fight. Now, I like like that word. It's a word, right? But I wanted people to know that like you have confidence to push forward as a black person when you know your history. But if you don't know, you're gonna keep getting punched in the ring, and you ain't gonna never fight back because you think they just a tougher person. Nah, it ain't never been that way. And I came up with the title honestly after the book. I sent out a sample manuscript and it got rejected. And I went back to the drawing board and I just came across, I just thought of the title one day because I had to go to a college fair and I needed to promote like my speaking services. So I said, well, what can I say? I said, well, I put up a sign and said, ask me how Black history saved my life. I took a picture, I posted it online, and that post like low key went a little viral, and I was like, well, dang, I think I got a good title,
Mm,
and
mm.
it makes sense though because it helped me push forward. Otherwise, I would have just took the abuse and went about my day like nothing happened.
Man, I just have like so much to ask you right now, and I know we're running out of time. But real quick, so you went viral more than one time.
Yeah.
Is there a like a method to going viral? Like, how do you go viral? Or is it just by luck?
Whew, man, yeah, that's a great question. I would probably have to sit down and write about that one day. So, of course, the first time I went viral was the hate crime. And then after that, I started to create content to get my voice out because I just felt like I didn't have the space to do it. So it became like a liberatory thing. Um, I went viral with TikTok. Really, bro, I didn't have the intention of doing that. I just wanted to tell our stories, man. And I think what I do is sometimes I come across a story that to me is like unbelievable. Like, dang, I didn't know Polly was a black woman who was free from slavery, and she used to defend us by chasing off slave catchers with a butcher knife and hot boiling water. When I came across that story, I was like, yo, that's crazy. Does anybody
Right,
else know this? So I shared it. That video hit like, 1.2, 1.3 mil or whatever. I think it's really just about delivering the material. And as an educator, I know that I need to give people the bare bone facts. If we're trying to go in depth, we can do that in the course. But I'm trying to get straight to the point and let people know what's most interesting. And also, too, you notice as an educator, I gotta say something that invites people in right off the top. So that's why I might start off and say, "Yo, Polly was a G." So as soon as I say that, you're gonna say, "What would she do?" Or you start off with something that grabs people and pulls them in. But I don't do it for that. It just so happens that sometimes, man, these things go. And I've had a few videos hit like 500,000 or a few mil. And honestly, I'm just grateful that people actually care about our history more than anything. I'm grateful that our people care and they care on TikTok, which completely surprised me.
right. Man, my next question for you is you were talking about the N word, and in fact, you even was called the N word, and this is why you went to court for the situation that you was in for the hate crime of the European woman calling you the N word and so forth. How do you feel about African black men and women using it to each other? And do you think it's a difference if obviously we don't say it to each other with the ER at the end? We should say it to each other with the A at the end. And I mean, I'm gonna just be frank. I
Yeah,
use it sometimes myself
yeah.
because of the environment that I grew up. I grew up saying the word.
Right.
um, how do you feel about should we stop saying it? It's in our music. It's all over.
Yeah,
Like,
man. I
what's your
think,
thoughts on that? I know
yeah,
that's a
yeah.
loaded question.
Man, I remember being in college, man, even high school, and they would have these town hall conversations just on the word. And I often, now in hindsight, I feel like it's a distraction. I think there's so here's what I'll say. I don't think we should call ourselves that, but I don't think that's the problem in our community. I think that if we view ourselves as what white people intended when they say that, then that's the problem. Yeah. But I don't think that it's the biggest deal. But I will say this: I remember talking to a group of kids before, and I had the kids put I am statements, and they had to put I am and end it with something. And these kids were like, eighth grade freshmen or whatever. And I called on some of the young men. They said, I am a king. I am this. And this one young man stood up and said, I am that nigga. And I stopped
Mm,
everything. I stopped everything. I was like, yo, hold on, bro. We got to have a conversation about that. And I kind of did go down the spiritual route too. And I said, bro, I said, you are made in the image of God. So like, like you talking about you that nigga, bro. Like you a God, king. Like you like. So I started going down this route of just saying like it's crazy. And I think David Banner made this point before too. It's crazy that we'll say this, but when somebody says, oh, I'm a God, and of course not saying we are the God, but just
mm,
like, yo, we are made in that image. We are powerful like God. Like it says this in various scriptures. Like people say, oh no, don't say that. That's outrageous. But like you don't mind when I say that about myself. You know what I'm saying? I think we made a mistake by putting it in our commercialized art forms because it made people think it's okay. Because we're selling that to people, and we know they ain't bleeping themselves out. You know what I'm saying? But I'll say this, just like you, I grew up saying the word all the time. It was just second nature. I don't even know where I learned it, but I grew up saying it. The only reason we say it with the A is because of our dialect. You know what I'm saying? The same reason why we say gotcha or gimme. That's just how we speak as African, West African people. In college though, when I started really studying this history, I had to stop, man, and it was rough. I went through a period in time where I was unlearning a lot of things. I went through a period of time where I was really angry and bitter with things that happened here. And I remember the Michael Richards situation when he was going off on a tangent. And I remember like a few other things like that. It just made me reflect and say, like, isn't there another way that I can just talk to my brother? You know what I'm saying? And that's what, and I made a conscious decision one day. I didn't write it down or nothing. I just said, I'm gonna stop saying it. So anybody that I met from college on, it don't pop up. Nah, for my bros I grew up with, like you said, it might slip out when we kick it. It
Oh,
might
so you still say it from time to
yeah,
time.
oh yeah, like if I'm kicking it with my guys, like I knew from elementary school, high school, like because you know, like when you kick it with somebody or you see somebody, your mind goes back to that moment in which you last saw them. So yeah, it's gonna come up. But I would never refer to somebody I just like if I met a brother on the street. Oh, what up, my nick? No, because I can't assume you even cool with that. You know what I'm saying? So it's a load of work. But with all of that said, I make that personal decision. Just it's like a dietary decision, man. I make a personal decision. But I'm not about to police another brother or sister saying that word. I don't think that's my place. You can say that word and still be empowering. A lot of my rappers still say it. My favorite rappers, when I rap along, I say the word. You know what I'm saying? But I personally believe that we should find other ways to refer to each other. But if we do want to say it, to me it is what it is. And I think white folks should know that. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not about to I don't call black women or women period a B. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm.
but if I heard them say that to each other, I might be like, oh wow, that's crazy. Why they do that? But I'm not about to be like, well, you gave me permission. Like, no, that's their decision. I've seen, our gay brothers and sisters refer to themselves with the F word. I would never do that. Now that we come from a time in which that was done, but I would never be like, hey, when you said it, no, that's what they want to do. And that's perfectly fine with me. You know what I'm saying? I think that it can sometimes be used as a distraction. And I think that when we see these headlines talking about white folks saying it, we should never be surprised. We should like go back to ourselves and say empowerment. Forget about them talking about that. What are we doing to empower ourselves? And do we believe ourselves to be what they're saying with that word?
Indeed. Two more questions. I don't want
Yeah.
to hold you too long. So we have a new segment called I Didn't Know. And
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned one already. Where you was like when you was doing your research on Black history, you didn't know. I missed the name. This woman where she was pouring hot water and
Unpolished.
she had a butcher knife on. I think it was the so-called slaveholders, or I'm
Yeah.
not sure who.
Yeah.
But you said that. Is there anything that you didn't know while you was reading a book or that you came across?
Man, I'll be real. And like people who follow me on TikTok or even on my Instagram, a lot, but not all, but a lot of the information I present is stuff that I've learned recently. You can only learn so much in school and college, right? I think sometimes we kind of, like, oh, I didn't, my history teacher ain't teach. Like, we don't have enough time to go through everything. So what college did for me though was it introduced these things and it lit a flame of curiosity. So like a lot of the stuff that empowers me today is what I learned after, like the poly situation. I learned about a guy named John Meacham who he was a preacher and a teacher in Missouri. And when they made it illegal to teach black folks, he opened up a school on a boat. Like, so he had a school on a boat to educate us because they said it was illegal. He's like, all right, bet I'm gonna find a way to educate us by any means necessary. I didn't learn about Robert Smalls in school. I learned about Robert Smalls, who freed himself on a Confederate ship in disguise, went back and freed his people, and then, became a congressman, and then bought the plantation he used to work on. I didn't learn that in school. I found it on a meme, and I did research. I didn't know about Black Wall Street in college. I saw it on a meme about 10 years ago, and I said that really happened, and I did research. So like for me, I think that we have to be lifelong learners and understand that even if I had a PhD in Black history, African studies, that I don't know everything. And that's why I love it so much. We talk in hundreds of thousands of years of history. We have to keep going because the further back we go, the blacker it gets and the better it gets, really. We were the first to do all of this, from being a doctor to being a dentist to being the griots and poets of the world and the architects and the mathematicians. So like we just have to keep, like, to me, if for anybody that thinks I'm like super smart or intelligent, it's only because I know I don't know. And I just keep trying to find out, because to me, you have to have more questions than answers. And that's how we get to where we need to be.
Right, right, right. Indeed, indeed. And I tell my babies this all the time because they're young. You teach a higher grade level than me, but even at a young age, I tell my students to listen more, listen more. You know, the Creator, He gave you two ears and one mouth
Yep.
for a reason. So
Yep.
listen more, and talk less. That's how
Right.
you gain wisdom. That's how you
Exactly.
gain knowledge.
Exactly.
Okay. To your point, many of us, we want to talk because we think we know, but we don't want to listen. We don't want to listen to see where is this brother coming from? Where is this sister coming from? But
Right.
we want to talk because we think we know everything.
Exactly.
So, and I think it was someone who said this. They said, a person who think they know everything knows nothing at all.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yes,
Right?
indeed. Yep.
So, indeed, we truly need to listen twice as much as we speak.
Yep.
Um, what books brought you into consciousness and ignited your motivation and dedication to Black history?
So I'm gonna take you back, and I'm gonna say off the top first, Malcolm X's autobiography.
Oh yeah.
It was a book that I read in and out a lot, just his whole life. Malcolm X is he's on my Mount Rushmore, man. He's probably the most impactful figure in my life, and just seeing his transformation as a person. And I like his story so much because as he was going through his experiences, he was also teaching at the same time. So he does a great job, just like Carter G. Woodson, of making you examine how you feel about yourself. And like even, the speech of, who taught you to hate yourself, it makes you think like, dang, that's deep. Because it wasn't us. And it takes you down that rabbit hole. So his book, I'm also going to throw out Frederick Douglass's first autobiography. I think that book right there, when I read that book when I first started taking Black history courses, it to see what he had to go through to do what I didn't used to like, and that's reading. I used to be like, I ain't got time to sit still and do all this. But to see he had to risk his life to teach himself, like, and then he becomes this great speaker and orator and fearless. Like, he stands in front of crowds of white people saying, y'all racist, y'all need to do better. At a period in time in which he could have got caught at any time and sold back. Like that brother right there, they just had a little documentary on his life on HBO that was very powerful too. Like that book, right, and it's a short read. The very first one is like 80 pages, I believe. So I highly recommend that. Another book I would say, this is a little known book probably, but it should receive a lot more exposure. It's called Brainwashed by Tom Burrell.
Oh yeah.
I When I was awakening, I remember, like, I would always see these town hall discussions on like the Nword or just like the State of the Black Union. Shout out to Tavis Smiley. He used to do that with Cornel West. I would always see these things and I used to love watching them on TV. So one day they had one at Chicago State University. I remember going with a friend and I saw like Michael Lick Dyson, Cornel West, Brother Farrakhan was there, and Tavis Smiley and Tom Burrell. I had never heard of him. He was a black dude that had a marketing company. So he knew how malicious the black inferiority campaign was, as he calls it. So when he was speaking and he talked about this stuff, I immediately went home and bought that book. And that book was so powerful because, again, it talks about how at the origin of America, they've essentially had an anti-black agenda since this country was created. And he did that with images and posters, and it was just very powerful. Again, those books for me, y'all, it helped me build myself, my self-esteem. So before we talk about community activism, we have to first reflect and say, how do I view myself as a black person, as an African person? And then once you restore that, then you're equipped to go out there and stand up in whatever capacity you do.
Indeed, indeed. Man, powerful. Um, what does education mean to you, brother?
Oh man, ooh, that's a deep one. That's a deep one. I don't think I've ever sat and actually thought about it, man. But I would say education is going on life's journey and understanding the reality, and so going on a journey in life, understanding the way things are, and finding out what you want to help, what you want to improve or what you want to experience. For myself and for us, I believe education is also a journey of understanding um, what our role is and how we improve our community. School doesn't function to help us for the most part, not all, but most schools, I would say, don't function to help us build up our community. They help us. They function as a means to help build up America's institutions. So, like, true education is these are the problems that you were born into, and this is how you resolve them. This is how you make society better as you pass the baton.
Indeed. Last question, brother. So teaching history to your students, what do you hope to gain from it?
Man, I think Brother Muhammad Ali said it best. Service is the rent you pay on this earth. That's all, bro. That's it. Like I know. Like I speak with so much passion because, like, when I first saw Malcolm X speak, bro, I was just like, like he's speaking to me. he like he was when he was doing this and doing like he was looking at the crowd, but he was talking to me, and I was just like, yo, if I could just do that, a small percentage of what he did for somebody. That's it. Like I know that at the status quo default level, this country espouses hatred for us. And I think sometimes when you say that, people think, no, they ain't walking around with the Klan robes and they no. Just look at TV for a day. Look at the images you see. That's what I mean. It's implicit a lot of times. Look at what they show. Look at the fact that I posted a story on my page about how three men were trying to start a race war. This happened less than a week ago. Three white men under 25 wanted to start a race war. And here's what you find when you do research. You don't see their pictures at all. Not one
Wow.
image of them. Now, whenever we do something or whenever we are placed in situations that produce crime and we get caught up in the system, they got our face everywhere. Imagine if those brothers had melanin. So what I mean is, like, education will help our kids be aware of this, because they want us to think that terrorism is synonymous with people with brown skin, as opposed to the reality of terrorism is synonymous with the European culture that came here in 1492. You see what I'm saying? So, like, I just want our kids to be privy to that so that they don't believe what racists say, and so that they can be self-sufficient and help improve their community, because, whether we are aware of this stuff or not, it's going to attack us in very subliminal and sometimes explicit ways.
Right. Sometimes directly or indirectly, indeed.
Exactly.
So we definitely need to be equipped with the knowledge. We definitely need to be equipped with the know-how in order to sometimes just save ourselves from
Yeah,
a devastating situation.
indeed.
Brother, man, Mr. Ernest Crim, thank you so much, man, for accepting the invitation to be a part of this profound intellectual discourse. I appreciate you, and keep on keeping on, and make sure that, well, you already know never to give up. You already have that self-motivating tenacity about you. So keep going, never give up, and keep on keeping on, brother.
Yes, indeed. Likewise, bro. Pleasure, man. It's a pleasure. Let's
Yes,
do
sir.
it
Yes,
again.
sir. Any last words?
Man, I would just close the interview with the African proverb that's at the beginning of my book. If you don't know who you are, anybody can name you. And if anybody can name you, you'll answer to anything. So, black folks, African folks, name yourself. We are regal. We are royal. That ain't changed. We got to change the way we identify ourselves.
Awesome. Good. Great. So, family, if you love what you have heard, definitely follow the brother. You can follow me, subscribe to my YouTube channel. And again, a reading people is a rising people. So let's read, let's ride, let's rise and make sure that we apply the knowledge as well. All right, so I'll leave you as I greeted you. Assalamu alaikum, shalom, hotep, Islam, alafia. Peace.
Peace.
Save this, brother, save it.
Okay.